One day this kid, he's 12, he's hanging out with his older cousin, and older cousin is like, "Hey, come here, let me tell you about my time in the war." And so older cousin starts to tell these gruesome stories about some of the things he did back in the Vietnam War, about people he had unived, and women he had done horrible things to, like unspeakable things that I can't even describe on this app, otherwise my video will get removed. But then to prove it, he busts out some Polaroid photos to show younger cousin, and most of these photos are of women, and they are absolutely brutal. And strangely, little cousin, he isn't grossed out, actually he's fascinated. And about a year later, the cousins are together again, and the younger cousin, his name's Ricardo, and the older cousin, his name's Mike. And so Ricardo and Mike, they're hanging out at Mike's place, and Mike, he suddenly gets into an argument with his wife, and he gets so mad that he pulls out a pew-pew, and he ends up unaliving her right there in front of little Ricardo. And again, Ricardo isn't grossed out, he's fascinated. Now you can decide whether all that actually messed him up or not, because shortly after that, Ricardo starts getting into drugs, particularly the kind that make you hallucinate. And he starts committing petty crimes and shoplifting all the time. And he gets really, really into his religion, and eventually he just says, "Fuck it," and he drops out of high school. A few years later, Ricardo's 17, and he gets a job at a local Holiday Inn. And while he's working his shift, he starts sneaking into the guests' rooms while they're asleep, and he'll steal their valuables. But then he goes even further, and he starts trying to assay some of the guests, and he eventually gets caught. And bam, they fire him. Oh, but it gets much worse. About 5 years later, Ricardo is 22, and he moves from Texas to San Francisco to get a fresh start. But instead of getting a job, he spends most of his time just doing drugs. And he basically just gives up on hygiene. Like the only thing he eats are junk food and soda, and he never brushes his teeth, so they inevitably start to rot. So he's just a stank ass at this point. And after about 2 years of living this stank ass lifestyle, Ricardo suddenly decides, you know what? I'm going to start murdering people. It sounds like fun. And then one day, while he's out in the neighborhood, Ricardo spots a girl, and she's 9. And the girl has lost a dollar bill, and she's out looking for it. And so Ricardo approaches her, and he's like, "Hey, I know where your dollar bill is. I can show you, follow me." And so she follows him into the basement of the hotel where he's living. And there he does horrible things to her, and he eventually univs her. Oh, but he doesn't stop there. 3 months later, he moves to Los Angeles, and there, he gets a room in a hotel on Skid Row. And he starts doing a lot more drugs. And one night, he starts stalking this 79-year-old woman who lives in the suburbs. And he breaks into her house, and then he assays her, and he univs her with a knife. Then he just steals all her money and her expensive jewelry. 9 months later, he strikes again. One night, he hides in this woman's garage, and he waits for her to get home. And when she finally does, he suddenly steps out, and he pulls out a pew-pew, and bang, he univs her. Then he goes into her house, and he sees the woman's roommate, and bang, he univs her too. Then about an hour later, he's at a local park, and he spots a random woman sitting in her car. And he suddenly grabs her, and he drags her out of it, and then he pulls out his pew-pew, and he univs her as well. And yeah, it just keeps getting worse, because 10 days later, Ricardo breaks into a house at night, and he shoots a man while he's sleeping. And then the man's wife wakes up, and she tries to fight back, so Ricardo shoots her too. And then he univs her with a knife. Then he steals her eyes, and he puts them in a jewelry box to take with him as a souvenir. And so Ricardo just continues on the streak of murder and saw. And he univs at least 5 more women and 5 more couples. Usually he'll break into their home at night, execute them, and then he'll draw religious symbols at the scene of the crime. Now at this point, police are looking at this string of attacks, and they're starting to think, there might be a serial killer on the loose here. So they start investigating. But as of now, they don't have much. They have some descriptions of him. They have some sort of fingerprints, and they have some shoe prints they found at some of the crime scenes. But interestingly enough, Ricardo's shoe print is unique. There had only been one pair of that brand of sneakers sold in Los Angeles in his size. So maybe they're onto something. Meanwhile, the news media is reporting on all of this, and so stories about his string